I run the largest criminal organization on the eastern seaboard. My father tried to leave this life, but he knew I could not. He thought a good woman would save my soul.
I run the largest criminal organization on the eastern seaboard, Tae-Min said, his voice devoid of emotion, as if he were discussing the weather rather than organized crime. My father tried to leave this life, but he knew I could not. He thought a good woman would save my soul. He scoffed, a dark, bitter sound that echoed in the vast library. I do not need saving. I need the inheritance to secure my position against the Busan faction. They smell blood now that he is dead. Nia stared at him, her heart pounding against her ribs. She was sitting in a leather chair that probably cost more than her entire college tuition, facing a man who looked like he had been carved out of night and sharp steel. I am leaving, Nia said, standing up. Her legs felt weak. Sit down, he commanded. It was not a shout, but the absolute authority in his voice forced her knees to buckle. She sat. I know about your debt, Tae-Min said, opening a folder on the mahogany desk. Student loans, 80,000. Back rent, for 1,000. Your brother's gambling debt to the localized gangs, 50,000. You are drowning, Nia. Nia felt cold, a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. How do you know that? I can wipe it all clean. Today, your brother will be found and protected. You can finish medical school. You'll have a monthly allowance that rivals a CEO's salary. Nia swallowed hard. And in exchange, you marry me. On paper, you live in this house. You play the role of the grieving daughter-in-law and a devoted wife for 1 year. After that, we divorce, and you walk away with $5 million. Nia looked at the man. He was dangerous. He was everything her mother had warned her about. But he was also the son of the man who had squeezed her hand and asked for peace just hours ago. Why me? She asked quietly. You could pay anyone to do this. My father's lawyers are watching. It has to be you, the one who was there. Tae-Min leaned forward, his dark eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her breath hitch. It is a transaction, Nia. Your freedom for my empire. Do we have a deal? You are definitely going to want to see how this whole thing unfolds, so make sure you are subscribed. Turn on notifications so you catch all my videos because they are all this good, no cap. Comment, let us go if you are ready for this journey. All right, let us do this. The air inside Silver Pines nursing home always smelled the same at 2 in the morning. It was a cocktail of lemon antiseptic, boiled cabbage, and the dusty, sweet smell of fading memories. For Nia Adebayo, it was the smell of survival. The hallway lights were dimmed to a ghostly hum, flickering occasionally like a heartbeat struggling to keep rhythm. Nia adjusted her scrubs, her back aching from a double shift. She was not supposed to be here. Her shift had ended 4 hours ago. But room 304 had called out again. Most of the nurses ignored the old man in 304. They called him the ghost. He was Korean, nonverbal, and had a gaze that could freeze water. His chart said Moon Byung-ho. No visitors. No family. Just a direct deposit that paid for the most expensive private suite in the facility every month, on the dot. But money could not buy comfort from the nightmares that plagued him. Nia pushed the door open softly. Mr. Moon, she whispered into the darkness. The old man was thrashing in his sheets, sweat beading on his forehead. A silent scream etched onto his face. The night terrors. They came for him every night, like clockwork demons collecting a debt. Nia did not page the doctor. She knew they would just sedate him, leaving him groggy and hollow the next day. Instead, she moved to the bedside, her movements practiced and gentle. She placed a cool cloth on his forehead and took his gnarled, trembling hand in hers. It is okay, she hummed, her voice a low, rich contralto that seemed to fill the sterile room with warmth. You are safe. The shadows are just shadows. Look at me. His eyes snapped open. For a moment, they were wild, filled with the smoke of some forgotten war. Then, they locked onto Nia's dark, compassionate eyes. He squeezed her hand with surprising strength. I am here, she soothed, switching to a soft Yoruba lullaby her grandmother used to sing. The melody was foreign to him, but the vibration of peace was universal. It was a song about the river guiding the weary home. Slowly, the tension left his body. His breathing evened out. He did not let go of her hand. He never spoke, but tonight his dry lips parted. The sound that came out was like dry leaves crushing underfoot. Tae-Min, he rasped, do not let him become darkness. Nia frowned, leaning closer. Who is Tae-Min? The old man's eyes drifted shut, exhausted. He pointed a shaking finger toward the drawer of his bedside table. You, he wheezed. Good heart. You, save him. Then, the monitor beeping changed rhythm. The jagged peaks and valleys on the screen smoothed into a flat, mournful line. His grip went slack. Mr. Moon. Nia's heart hammered. She checked his pulse. Faint, thready. He was fading, not from a heart attack, but just letting go. Stay with me, she whispered, squeezing his hand. He looked at her one last time, a strange clarity in his gaze. Tell him, he whispered. I was proud. And then he was gone. Nia stood there in the silence, tears pricking her eyes. She had lost patience before, but Mr. Moon was different. He was a puzzle she had spent 6 months protecting from the indifference of the world. She closed his eyes gently, murmured prayer, and opened the drawer he had pointed to. Inside was a simple, heavy envelope with a wax seal, and a name written in sharp, angular Hangul, and below in English. Tae-Min. Before she could process it, the atmosphere in the facility changed. The silence of the hallway was shattered not by noise, but by a sudden, suffocating pressure. The air grew heavy. The door to room 304 swung open. Nia spun around. Standing in the doorway was a man who looked like he had been carved out of night and sharp steel. He was tall, wearing a black trench coat over a suit that cost more than Nia would earn in a decade. His hair was dark, falling slightly over eyes that were identical to the old man's. But where Mr. Moon's eyes held regret, this man's eyes held an abyss. He was flanked by 4 other men, all massive, all silent. The hallway behind them was empty. The night nurses were nowhere to be seen. The man walked into the room. He did not look at Nia. He looked only at the body on the bed. He did not cry. He did not flinch. He just stood there, a statue of grief compressed into rage. He is gone, Nia said, her voice trembling slightly, but holding firm. She would not let this terrifying stranger disrespect the dead. The man finally turned to her. Up close, he was devastatingly handsome, with high cheekbones and a jawline that could cut glass, but his energy was radioactive. Violence radiated off him in waves. I know, he said. His voice was a deep baritone, smooth and cold as polished marble. I felt it. Are you? Tae-Min. His eyes narrowed. Who are you? I am Nia. I was his aide. His aide. He repeated, looking her up and down. He took in her worn scrubs, her tired eyes, the cheap braids pulled back in a bun. Leave us. I have something for you, she said, reaching for the envelope. One of the guards stepped forward, hand reaching inside his jacket, but the man held up a hand. Nia extended the envelope. He told me to give this to you, and he said. She hesitated. The man terrified her, but she owed it to Mr. Moon. He said to tell you he was proud. For a split second, the armor cracked. Something raw and agonizing flashed across Tae-Min's face before the mask slammed back into place. He took the envelope. He did not open it. Get her out of here, he said to his men, turning back to his father. Nia was escorted out not roughly, but with an absolute finality, as she walked to her beat-up Honda Civic in the parking lot. She looked back at the window of room 304. She thought that was the end of it. She was wrong. The next morning, Nia's life imploded. She arrived at her apartment complex to find her belongings on the sidewalk. It was a humiliating pile of textbooks, clothes, and kitchenware soaking in the damp Atlanta morning air. The landlord was there, arms crossed, looking bored. The eviction notice was clear, Nia. 3 months back rent. You are out. I get paid on Friday. Nia pleaded, grabbing a box of books before the damp seeped through the cardboard. Please, Mr. Henderson. I just need a few more days. It is done. Lock is changed. Nia sat on the curb, her face buried in her hands. The student loans from her pa's medical degree, the debt her brother had left her before disappearing, the rent. It was a tidal wave, and she was drowning. She was 24 years old, brilliant, hardworking, and homeless. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello, Miss Adebayo. The voice was cold, precise. This is Kim from the Dragon Group. A car is waiting for you at the corner. What? Who is this? Mr. Kong Tae-Min requests your presence. It regards the late Moon Byung-ho. Nia looked up. A sleek black sedan with tinted windows was idling at the curb. It looked like a shark swimming among minnows. She had no home, no money, and the son of the man she had comforted was asking for her. Curiosity and a strange sense of destiny made her stand up. Okay, she whispered. The destination was not an office. It was an estate in the hills outside the city, a fortress of glass and concrete hidden behind iron gates. Nia was led into a library that smelled of old paper and expensive scotch. Tae-Min was standing by the window, staring out at the gray sky. He was not wearing a trench coat today, just a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing a tattoo of a serpentine dragon winding around his left forearm. He turned as she entered. Sit. Nia sat on the edge of the leather chair. Look, if this is about the nursing home, I didn't do anything wrong. I took care of him. I know, Tae-Min said. He walked over to the desk and picked up the envelope she had given him. It was open now. My father left a will. It is unconventional. He slid a piece of paper across the desk. Nia read it. The legal jargon was dense, but the core message was clear. Moon Byung-ho, former head of the Moon Syndicate, left his entire legitimate empire, comprising billions of dollars in real estate and shipping, to his estranged son Kong Tae-Min, on one condition: to inherit. Tae-Min said, his voice devoid of emotion. I must be married, specifically, to a woman who is not of our world, a woman who understands compassion. Nia frowned. Okay, so find a wife. He named you. The air left the room. Nia stared at him. Excuse me. Read the last paragraph. Nia looked down. The woman who holds my hand when I pass. She is the one. Marry her. Tae-Min. Learn from her warmth, or the fire of this life will burn you to ash. This is insane. Nia laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. I am not marrying you. I do not know you. You look like you kill people for a living. I do, Tae-Min said simply. Nia froze. I run the largest criminal organization on the eastern seaboard. He continued, as if discussing the weather. My father tried to leave this life, but he knew I could not. He thought a good woman would save my soul. He scoffed, a dark, bitter sound. I do not need saving. I need the inheritance to secure my position against the Busan faction. They smell blood now that he is dead. I am leaving. Nia stood up. Sit down. He commanded. It was not a shout, but the authority in his voice forced her knees to buckle. I know about your debt. Tae-Min said, opening a folder. Student loans, 80,000. Back rent for 1,000. Your brother's gambling debt to the localized gangs, 50,000. You are drowning, Nia. Nia felt cold. How do you know that? I can wipe it all clean. Today, your brother will be found and protected. You can finish medical school. You will have a monthly allowance that rivals a CEO's salary. And in exchange, you marry me. On paper, you live in this house. You play the role of the grieving daughter-in-law and a devoted wife for 1 year. After that, we divorce, and you walk away with $5 million. Nia looked at the man. He was dangerous. He was everything her mother had warned her about, but he was also the son of the man who had squeezed her hand and asked for peace. Why me? She asked quietly. You could pay anyone to do this. My father's lawyers are watching. It has to be you, the one who was there. Tae-Min leaned forward, his dark eyes locking onto hers. It is a transaction, Nia. Your freedom for my empire. Do we have a deal? Nia thought of her belongings on the sidewalk. She thought of the fear of answering the phone, thinking it was a debt collector. 1 year. She asked. 1 year. No touching. She said firmly. We do not sleep together. This is business. Tae-Min looked at her, his gaze lingering on her lips for a fraction of a second too long before returning to her eyes. I do not mix business with pleasure. You are safe. Nia took a deep breath. Where do I sign? The wedding was 3 days later. It was not a celebration of love. It was the sealing of a contract. The courthouse was sterile and quick. But the real ceremony, the one that mattered to the shadowy board of elders who controlled the family trust, took place at the estate. Nia wore a modernized hanbok, made of white silk. It was beautiful, but she felt like an imposter in it. She had woven cowrie shells into her braided hair, a silent nod to her own ancestors, a way to keep a piece of herself in this foreign world. When she walked out into the main hall, the room went silent. Tae-Min stood at the altar. He looked devastating in a tuxedo, the sharp lines of the suit emphasizing his broad shoulders and narrow waist. When he saw her, his stoic mask faltered for the briefest of moments. He stared, not with the cold calculation of a businessman, but with the sudden, sharp intake of breath of a man seeing something real for the first time in years. Close your mouth, she whispered as she reached him, her voice barely audible over the soft traditional music. It is business, remember? A flicker of amusement danced in his eyes, lighting them up in a way that made her stomach flip. You clean up well, nurse. You do not look half bad yourself, gangster. The ceremony was a blur of bowing and pouring tea. The elders, men with faces like dried parchment and eyes like hawks, watched every move. They were looking for a crack. They were looking for a lie. Nia played her part perfectly. She was demure but strong. She poured the tea with steady hands. She bowed with respect. When it was over and the last of the black cars had rolled down the driveway, the house felt enormous and cold, so incredibly cold. The year began in silence. The house was vast, a museum of modern art and ancient artifacts that felt more like a mausoleum than a home. Tae-Min was rarely home before midnight. Nia had her own wing. She went back to her medical studies online, studying the massive library, surrounded by books she was afraid to touch. But you cannot live in a house with a fire without feeling the heat. It started with food. Nia could not stand the silent, solitary meals prepared by the staff. The food was exquisite Michelin star quality, but it had no soul. It was cold fish and perfectly cut vegetables that tasted like nothing. One rainy Tuesday, she marched into the kitchen. You can go, she told the chef, a terrified young man named Park. I will cook tonight, but Mr. Kong expects. I will handle Mr. Kong. Go. She raided the pantry. She found rice. She found tomatoes, peppers, onions. She found spices hidden in the back that looked like they had never been opened. For the next hour, the kitchen was not a sterile laboratory. It was a home. She made jollof rice and fried plantains. The spicy, savory scent filled the sterile hallways, chasing away the smell of lemon polish and loneliness. Tae-Min walked in at 11 at night, looking exhausted. His shirt was stained with something dark that Nia prayed was wine, but knew deep in her gut was blood. He stopped in the doorway, sniffing the air. What is that smell? He asked, walking into the kitchen. Food. Real food. Sit. Nia plated a dish, the steam rising the cool air. He hesitated. He looked at the plate, then at her. He sat. He took a bite. His eyes widened. The spice hit him, a sudden burst of heat that made his eyes water. But so did the flavor. Rich, complex, comforting. It tasted like life. He ate the whole plate in silence, scraping the last grains of rice with a spoon. It is good, he admitted, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. Better than the cardboard you usually eat, she retorted, leaning against the counter. She noticed him favoring his left side. He was holding himself stiffly, his breath shallow. You are hurt. I am fine. He stood up to leave. I am a nurse, Tae-Min, and almost a doctor. Take off the shirt. Nia, do not. Take off the shirt. He glared at her. It was the look that made grown men tremble. But Nia just crossed her arms and waited. Slowly, reluctantly, he unbuttoned the shirt. Nia hissed. A long, jagged slash ran down his ribs. It was angry and red, oozing blood. It was poorly bandaged with what looked like a bar napkin. "Sit back down," she ordered. She fetched her kit from her room. For the next 20 minutes, the kitchen was silent except for the sound of rain drumming against the window pane and the sound of their breathing. She cleaned the wound, her hands steady and gentle. She could feel the heat radiating off his skin. She could feel the tension in his muscles, hard as rock under her fingers. Tae-Min watched her. He watched the way her brow furrowed in concentration. He watched the way her skin contrasted against his. He felt the warmth of her fingers seeping into his ice-cold existence. It was a sensation he had forgotten existed. Gentleness. "Care, why did you stay with him?" Tae-Min asked suddenly, his voice rough, breaking the silence. "My father. Why were you there when he died?" Nia tied off the suture, snipping the thread. "Because nobody should die alone, not even a man with a heavy past." She looked up, her eyes meeting his. "He loved you, you know. He talked about you in his sleep. He was afraid the darkness would swallow you." Tae-Min looked away, the muscle in his jaw jumping. "He is the one who cast me into the darkness. He is the one who built this life and then trapped me in it. Maybe, but he wanted to pull you back out. That letter, it was his way of throwing you a rope." Nia placed a hand gently on his uninjured shoulder. "You do not have to be what he made you, Tae-Min. You can just be you." He looked at her hand on his shoulder. Then he looked up at her face. The air between them crackled. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something magnetic, something dangerous in a completely different way. "You should go to bed. Nia," he whispered, his voice dangerously low. "Before I forget the terms of our contract." Nia's breath hitched. She could feel the pull, the gravity of him. She pulled her hand away. "Good night, Tae-Min." She walked out of the kitchen, her heart racing. She felt his eyes burning into her back all the way to the door. Months passed. The business arrangement began to fray at the edges, replaced by a domestic intimacy that terrified them both. They argued over politics at the breakfast table. They watched movies on the rare nights he was home early, sitting on opposite ends of the couch, but slowly drifting closer as the movie went on. He taught her how to swear in Korean, finding endless amusement in her pronunciation. She taught him how to dance to Afrobeats, laughing until her sides hurt as this lethal crime lord tried to loosen his hips in the living room. He started bringing her gifts, not jewelry or cars, things that money could buy easily. He brought her things that showed he listened. A first edition medical textbook she had mentioned once, a rare spice blend from Lagos he had imported specially, a comfortable chair for her study corner in the library, and he became protective, not just as an asset, but as a person. When they attended a gala for the city's elite, the tension was palpable. Nia wore a dress of deep emerald green that hugged her curves, her hair swept up in an elegant style. She held Tae-Min's arm, walking into a room full of people who whisper behind their hands. A rival business owner, a man named Viper, approached them. He was drunk, his eyes sliding over Nia with disrespect. "So this is the new wife." Viper sneered. "I did not know the dragon had a taste for exotic help. Tell me, does she clean the house before she warms a bed? Or is she just a trophy maid?" The room went silent. People stopped drinking. The music seemed to fade away. Tae-Min did not shout. He did not pull a gun. He simply let go of Nia's arm and walked over to Viper. He placed a hand on the man's shoulder. It looked like a friendly gesture, but Nia saw Viper's knees buckle under the pressure. Tae-Min leaned in and whispered something in his ear. Nia watched the color drain from Viper's face. The man turned pale, trembling so hard his drink spilled. I apologize," Viper stammered, looking at Nia with terror in his eyes. "Mrs. Kong, please forgive my rudeness." Then he turned and fled the building, nearly tripping over his own feet. "What did you say to him?" Nia asked later in the car. The city lights blurred past them, streaks of gold and red in the rain. "I told him that if he ever disrespected my wife again, I would dismantle his life piece by piece, starting with his tongue and ending with everyone he has ever loved." Nia looked at him. The profile of his face was hard, illuminated by the dashboard lights. "You really are a monster." "I told you," he said, Staring ahead, his grip on the steering wheel white-knuckled. "I told you what I am. But you are my monster," she murmured. Tae-Min slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a halt on the deserted road, tires screeching against the asphalt. He turned to her, his eyes blazing with a mix of anger and desire. "Do not say that," he rasped. "Do not claim me, Nia. I am temporary. This is temporary. You are going to leave. You're going to take your money, and you are going to leave and find a nice doctor who does not have blood under his fingernails. Is it?" Nia challenged. She unbuckled her seatbelt and turned to face him. "Because it does not feel temporary when you look at me. It does not feel temporary when you come home to me. It does not feel temporary when you defend me. You deserve a doctor," he said, his voice cracking, the vulnerability shining through the cracks in his armor. "A man with clean hands, not a butcher. I can wash your hands, Tae-Min," she said softly. She reached out and cupped his face. Her thumbs traced a sharp line of his cheekbones. "Let me decide what I deserve. Do not make that choice for me." He broke. He kissed her. It was not gentle. It was desperate, a collision of two worlds starving for connection. He kissed her like he was drowning and she was oxygen, his hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, as if he could merge their souls through sheer force of will. Nia kissed him back with equal force, her hands gripping the lapels of his jacket. For that night, in the front seat of a car that cost more than a house, there was no contract, there was no debt, there was no mafia, there was only fire, and the terrifying realization that they were falling in love in a war zone. But happiness in Tae-Min's world is a beacon for tragedy. 3 weeks before the contract was set to end, the war began. It wasn't a war of armies or borders. It was a war of shadows and silence. The Busan faction, led by a man named Choi, decided the marriage was a sham. They wanted the Moon territory. They wanted the ports. They wanted everything Tae-Min had fought to protect. Nia was coming home from her final exam when the SUV rammed her car. The impact was deafening, metal screeching against metal, glass shattering like diamonds. Her head slammed against the steering wheel, and the world went black. She woke up in a warehouse, tied to a chair. The smell of gasoline and old blood filled the air. Her head throbbed with a dull, sickening ache. Choi stood before her, a small, rat-faced man with a cruel smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was flanked by men with guns, their faces hidden in the shadows. "So," Choi sneered, circling her chair like a shark, "this is the weakness of the dragon, the maid who plays house." Nia spat blood from her split lip onto the concrete floor. "He is going to kill you. He will try." Choi laughed, a high, grating sound, "and he will walk into a trap. And then the Moon Empire will be mine. And you, well, you will be a footnote in history." He pulled out a phone and dialed a video call. He turned the screen so Nia could see. Tae-Min's face appeared. He looked calm, sitting in his office, but Nia knew him now. She saw the absolute nuclear rage behind his eyes, the kind of rage that burned cities to the ground. "Tae-Min, don't come." Nia screamed, straining against the ropes. "It is a trap. Do not listen to him." Choi backhanded her across the face. The force of the blow snapped her head back. "Quiet, bitch." On the screen, Tae-Min didn't blink. His voice was dangerously soft. "If you touch her again, Choi, I will not kill you. I will keep you alive in a basement for 50 years. Every day you will beg for death, and every day I will deny you. Come to the docks." Choi laughed, clearly enjoying the power trip. "Alone. No backup. No police. Or she dies. I will paint the walls with her blood." The screen went black. "You are an idiot." Nia wheezed, looking at Choi through swollen eyes. "You think he is coming alone. You think he plays by your rules. You clearly do not know who you are dealing with. He has no choice. Love makes men weak." An hour later, the warehouse doors blew open, not with a bang, but with the roar of an explosion that shook the foundation. Dust and debris filled the air. Gunfire erupted. Short, controlled bursts. It was a sound of precision. Tae-Min's men. Choi grabbed Nia by the hair, dragging her toward the back exit. She screamed, stumbling over her own feet. Move, or I put a bullet in your brain right here. They burst out onto the loading dock, rain pouring down in sheets. The sky was dark and angry. Choi pressed the barrel of his gun into Nia's temple. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Stop! Choi screamed into the darkness, his voice cracking with fear. Or I paint the concrete with her brains. Back off. Tae-Min stepped out of the shadows. He was alone on the dock. He was drenched, his expensive suit ruined, a gun in each hand. He looked like a vengeful god. He dropped the guns. They clattered onto the wet metal. Let her go, Tae-Min said, raising his hand slowly. Take me. I am the one you want. No, Nia cried, tears mixing with the rain on her face. Don't do it, Tae-Min. Such love. Choi sneered, tightening his grip on Nia. Touching, but stupid. He tightened his finger on the trigger. But Choi had forgotten one thing. Nia Adebayo was not a damsel in distress. She was a girl from Lagos who had fought for everything she had. She was a nurse who knew anatomy. She knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum pain. Nia slammed her head backward into Choi's nose. The cartilage crunched with a sickening sound. Choi screamed, the gun wavering as blood gushed from his face. In that split second, Tae-Min moved faster than humanly possible. He didn't reach for his guns. He launched a knife from his sleeve with a flick of his wrist. The blade buried itself in Choi's shoulder. The gun clattered to the ground. Nia scrambled away, her feet slipping on the wet concrete. She teetered over the edge of the dock, her arms flailing. Nia. Tae-Min didn't hesitate. He dove. The water was freezing, black and churning. Nia struggled, her heavy dress dragging her down like an anchor. Panic set in. The cold was paralyzing. Then, strong arms wrapped around her waist. Tae-Min. He kicked toward the surface, dragging her up with him. They broke the surface, gasping for air, the rain pelting their faces. His men were already pulling them onto the boat that had been waiting in the shadows. As they lay on the deck, shivering, coughing up water, Tae-Min crawled over to her. He checked her frantically. Her head, her arms, her face. His hands were shaking. Are you hurt? Did he hurt you? Tell me where it hurts. I am fine. Nia chattered, her teeth clicking uncontrollably. I am fine. Just cold. Tae-Min collapsed onto his back, staring up at the rain, laughing. A jagged, hysterical sound that was more relief than humor. What? Nia asked, crawling over to look down at him, water dripping from her hair onto his face. My father was right. He wheezed, closing his eyes. You are the only one who could survive me. 2 weeks later, the contract expiration date. The estate was quiet. The war was over. Choi was dealt with. The inheritance was secured. Nia stood in the foyer, her bags packed. The $5 million had been transferred to her account that morning. She was free. She could go anywhere, do anything. She looked at the grand staircase one last time. Tae-Min appeared at the top. He walked down slowly, his hand trailing on the banister. He looked tired, but the darkness in his eyes had receded, replaced by a quiet sorrow. He wore a simple sweater and jeans, looking more human than she had ever seen him. The car is ready, he said softly. Yeah, you have the money. Yes, good. You can finish your degree, open your clinic, help people. That is what you do best. That is the plan. Nia said. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. She wanted him to ask her to stay. She needed him to ask, but she knew he wouldn't. He was too noble in his own twisted way. But Tae-Min remained silent. He was letting her go because he loved her. He was protecting her from his world. He was giving her the freedom she deserved. Nia picked up her bag. She walked to the door. Her hand hovered over the handle. She remembered the letter. Learn from her warmth, or the fire will burn you to ash. Nia swore in Yoruba. She dropped the bag with a thud. She turned around and marched back to him, her eyes flashing. You are an idiot, Kong Tae-Min. He blinked, taken aback. Excuse me. You think protecting me means pushing me away. You think I can go back to a normal life after this. After you. After almost dying for you. Nia, look at what happened. You almost died. My world is poison. It destroys everything it touches. Then we make an antidote, she said fiercely, grabbing his hands. I am not afraid of the dark, Tae-Min. I held your father's hand while he walked into it. I am holding yours now. I am not letting go. She squeezed his hands, just as she had squeezed his father's. The contract is over. The fake marriage is done. The business is concluded. Tae-Min looked at their joined hands. His fingers curled around hers, tight, desperate. He looked at her like a drowning man looking at a lifeline. So, Nia whispered, stepping closer, I am proposing a new deal. What are the terms? He asked, his voice thick with emotion, his eyes searching hers. Lifetime commitment. No expiration date. You run the empire. I run the house. You keep me safe. I keep you human. And she smirked, a playful glint in her eyes. You have to eat my jollof rice at least once a week. And dance with me, even if you look ridiculous. Tae-Min pulled her into him, burying his face in the crook of her neck. He inhaled her scent. Lavender and rain and life. He felt the steady beat of her heart against his chest. I accept, he whispered against her skin, his voice trembling. I accept everything. 3 years later, the nursery was painted a soft yellow, filled with sunlight. Tae-Min stood over the crib, looking down at the sleeping baby girl. She had his nose and Nia's mouth. She had a head full of dark curls and a grip that could rival her father's. Nia walked in wearing her doctor's coat. She had opened her clinic 3 months ago in the heart of the city, serving the community she had once been part of. She wrapped her arms around Tae-Min's waist and behind, resting her cheek on his back. She is sleeping. Finally, the fear dragon of the East whispered, not daring to move a muscle. She has your lung capacity. She screamed for an hour. She has your stubbornness. She refused to sleep until she was ready. Tae-Min turned in her arms. He looked at his wife, then at his daughter. The shadows were still there, outside the walls of his house. The world was still dangerous. But inside there was light. There was warmth. There was love. My father, Tae-Min said softly, stroking the baby's cheek with a gentle finger. He would have loved her. He does, Nia said, kissing his chin. He sent us to each other, didn't he? He knew. Tae-Min kissed her, a slow, deep burn that promised forever. A kiss that tasted of gratitude and peace. Yes, he said, pulling back to look at her. He finally did something right. The baby stirred, letting out a small coo. The Mafia boss and the doctor froze. But the baby just sighed, reached out a tiny hand, and grabbed Tae-Min's finger. She held on tight. He held on. He would never let go. And in that quiet nursery, surrounded by love, the darkness didn't stand a chance. And that is the story of how a nurse saved a dragon, and a dragon gave a nurse a kingdom. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe for more incredible tales. Leave a comment below with your favorite part. Until next time,